Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday to you on this April 21st, 2025. I have all of the stories for your rush hour ride to work. Hope you had a happy Easter, got high with your family, and ate some peeps, right? What better way to celebrate? Well, the bird flu, is it back? Did it ever go anywhere? Are we just not paying attention to it? Either way, a bird flu expert is sounding the alarm why we should be concerned. Also, Dancing with the Stars hard launch. I'll tell you which couple announced their relationship while they were performing on stage. And then more on the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni story, as Justin Baldoni's former co-host, Liz Plank, and now friend with Blake and Ryan, I guess some fans online did some research to show that Liz Plank opened up her business in the same building and same address as Blake's business, which was used for the Sham Subpoena. We'll get into all of it. Is there a lot to this story? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. Also, we will discuss the Supreme Court having another bombshell decision over the weekend and the inner riffing in the Supreme Court as 7 judges to 2 decided to halt the deportations without due process. And speaking of due process, Joe Rogan, podcaster, comedian, UFC commentator, comes in and talks about the fears of not using due process. And it's like, hello, welcome, way to be late to the party. But due process is something we want to fight for each other to have, right? It's not a left versus right issue. It's a democracy issue. So anyway, we'll cover all these stories and more. And it all starts right now on The Rush. All right, in a surprise story, Elizabeth Hurley and Billy Ray Cyrus cuddling up in an Easter post, possibly debuting a new romance. It's a no from me, dog, okay? It's a no from me. Elizabeth, you can do better. You know, maybe you don't have girlfriends in your life to tell you this, but I'm here. If you listen to The Rush, I'm here to tell you, you can do. I don't care how achy or breaky his heart is. Billy Ray ain't in his prime. All right, but hey, you know, do your best, have fun, whatever. And speaking of relationships, Emma Slater and Alan Burstyn officially announced they're dating. And by officially, I mean they smooched on stage, and the fans went crazy. Now, they're, of course, Dancing with the Stars professionals, but I got to tell you, I mean, how many of these Dancing with the Stars professionals must be smooching with each other? You think those band kids get it on. I mean, they're doing the Paso Doble left and right, so there's probably little to be left to the imagination when it comes to the Dancing with the Stars tour bus. Well, in other news, Will Smith's comeback album flops with low sales, misses the Billboard 200. I mean, is anybody surprised by this? The only thing that didn't slap when it came to Will Smith was the artistic renditions on his rap album. Was that a stretch, maybe? Will Smith's comeback album misses the Billboard 200 as he opens up about Oscar slapping plans major European tour. Listen, as an elder millennial who loved Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it's just a no from me. I'd still get jiggy with it. Listen, I would go to a Will Smith concert, but he needs to be playing Miami, the Men in Black songs. You know what I mean? I need, what's the one about summertime? Is it called Summertime? You know what I'm talking about. Get Jazzy Jeff over there. We'll take care of it. All right, well, let's go to some of the interesting stories of the day. 60 Minutes posted this last night. It's easy to sound like an alarmist, and here is a bird flu expert discussing we might have a little risk to humanity. Have a listen.
Is a threat that is very significant and very real. And I recognize also this is a moment where it's easy to sound like an alarmist. What I'm here to tell you is this is a very serious threat to humanity. And the longer we let this persist, the greater the risks are going to be.
And again, this is an infectious disease doctor right there who is speaking, but this is the problem, right? Is, you're a couple of years past COVID. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And I'm not saying they should or shouldn't care. Just, try not to step on any bird crap while you're walking your dog. And if you have a cough, don't, go in public. I don't know what else to say at this point. They've kind of gutted the CDC and, will this thing spread? Who knows? I mean, who knows? But either way, and again, God bless our first responders and healthcare professionals, but it's a tough time to do your job because I don't even know what information is out there for us if there is an outbreak, but we'll have to see. All right. Speaking of outbreaks, an outbreak in stupidity would be the, Vanderpump Rules remake, The Valley. Britney Cartwright broke up with Jax. Do you guys follow this story? Well, now she was caught kind of pimping her season 2 of The Valley. I don't know. I haven't watched the season 2 yet. I find this show interesting, but kind of for all the wrong reasons. It's kind of sad to watch, relationships fail and whatnot, but hey, it's reality TV. Here is what Britney had to say about her relationship with Jax failing.
It's a bit explosive. How did it feel, looking back at that?
It's explosive all the time. So there's nothing different. So,
Literally nothing different.
It's hard to relive and rewatch a lot of things from back then, but it's not,
So
I'm prepared.
Are things getting any better with you two now? Like with co-parenting, how's that going?
Yes, a little bit better.
Okay, a little bit better.
Yeah.
And where are things at, with the divorce process right now?
Don't really know.
In process.
Yeah, in the process. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
still forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
These interviews are so crazy, right? Because they're wildly contrived. They're you call TMZ ahead of time. You're going to see them, and they're there to promote the show. So anyway, in the upcoming season, Jax he quits doing cocaine, and now they're co-parenting. I mean, is this not modern life? When I was a kid, we watched the Full House. They were very charming stories of mixed families. But now it's like no, Jax is doing coke and blow before the Little League games. Well, allegedly, I don't know. But anyhow, we'll have to see how that all plays out. All right, well, here's what I want to do. I want to get into this story. I'm going to save all the other political stuff for the end, but this is very cultural, what's going on with this Signal group chat. Yes, again, this isn't a repeat. We're going to go back to Signal group chat. After that, I'll get into the Blake Lively stuff, so stick around for that. But here we have news sources came out over the weekend saying that Pete Hegth reportedly shared sensitive Yemen attack details in a second Signal group chat. Now, we already knew he had one, where they accidentally invited the reporter in, but now the sources say that the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Pete Hegth, shared stuff with his wife and a former Fox News producer. So let's have a listen to this story. This could be a bombshell. This could be the one that gets him fired or stepping down. I'm not too sure. I'm not holding my breath. Have a listen.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this Easter Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We begin tonight with breaking news just coming in. Sources say Secretary of Defense Pete Hegth is said to have shared sensitive details about the strike in Yemen targeting Houthis in a second Signal group chat on March 15th that included his wife and brother, among others. This comes just weeks after Hegth and officials mistakenly added an editor from The Atlantic to a group chat. Let's bring in ABC's Alex Brachet. Alex, what's the latest that you're learning tonight?
Lindsay, tonight, two sources confirmed to ABC News that report by the New York Times that Defense Secretary Pete Hegth shared military operation details to a group chat of family and friends titled Defense Team Huddle. In this private Signal chat that included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer, the defense secretary shared specifics, including flight schedules of a strike in Yemen targeting Houthis back in March. The secretary's brother, Phil, and his lawyer, Tim Parlator, both have jobs at the Pentagon. Hegth's wife is not a Defense Department employee, and none of them have any apparent reason to be briefed on military operations.
Come on. The wife has to know, right? You got to tell your wife, hey, honey, gonna be late for dinner, bombing the Yemens. No, okay. So we'll have to, look, is this the biggest story of all of the crazy things going on in the circus? No, but it does go to show that you're putting American soldiers' lives at risk when you share so flippantly war plans with your significant other. Anyhow, because God knows Pete Hegth's wife, she's going to be in her yoga class, spilling the beans. You know what I mean? Who knows what's going on from there? All right, well, coming up next, we're going to get into some of these thoughts around Blake Lively and Liz Plank and the theories that there may be more to the conspiracy. All of this coming next. So if you haven't been caught up, God bless you, but Blake Lively was accused of filing a sham lawsuit against John Doe's, just random people, only in an attempt to extract information from Stephanie Jones. Now, here's an interesting comment that was being circulated online. I wanted to share it with you. What's being missed in this conversation is not just a procedural irregularity of filing a sham lawsuit with a nominal plaintiff and unnamed defendants to subpoena records from a California company. It's the profound ethical breach that comes with it. Manat's maneuver, the lawyer, wasn't some technicality. It was a deliberate end run around the foundational protections of due process. By initiating a fictitious action solely to issue a subpoena without notice, they sidestepped judicial oversight and deprived the actual parties of any opportunity to contest the scope, purpose, or authenticity of the request. But more critically, the very safeguard they circumvented, notice, exists to prevent exactly what happened next, the selective release and public weaponization of incomplete or manipulated data. Had proper notice been given, all relevant communications could have been preserved, vetted, and placed on the record before any leaks to the press occurred. Instead, their abusive process directly enabled the New York Times to publish a narrative shaped by one side, curated evidence, resulting in real reputational harm and irreversible consequences. This isn't just a procedural violation, it's a substantive injury caused by a law firm knowingly bypassing the checks designed to prevent it. Wow. Internet has some smart people, guys, and this is exactly the case. And we'll discuss due process more later, but it's the same thing when it comes to these, Venezuelans that we sent to El Salvador. You can't just say, trust us, bro, they're MS-13. Show the math. Take it to court and do it the right way. So, again, yes, can anyone else connect Blake Lively to El Salvador? I can. And that's what it's all about, due process. So when you go to the El Salvadorians and when you talk about the prisons there and say, oh, so you support gang members? No, you support democracy. You support doing it the right way. And by her having this sham subpoena, they were able to extract information from a company that otherwise they might not be allowed to get. So I'm going to share some interesting thoughts about, actually, let's go right to this reel right here. This is little girl attorney's take on Stephanie Jones' failure to follow the legal process. Again, the subpoena that was used, a sham subpoena, was used to get Stephanie Jones records of her employee that would have otherwise been protected by California law.
So any of the text messages or information involving her California-based employee is subject to protection by California law. So responding to a subpoena that requires the disclosure of information of her former California employee required the protection of the employee or former employee in California. And here, as far as we know, a notice to consumer or employee was not served on the people whose information was being sought that would constitute a consumer or employee under California law.
So they're saying there should have been a notice to Jennifer Abel, the person whose cell phone records were taken through the subpoena. Now, after finding this subpoena, people started to piece together all the things over the weekend that the same address that Blake Lively used to file the sham subpoena from her defunct company, Van Zandt, is the same address Liz Plank is using for her business. Now, you might say, well, that could just be a coincidence. A lot of maybe there's thousands of entertainment LLCs that come all out of the same office. Maybe they all share the same accountant who sets up their corporation. Absolutely could be the case, but let's have a listen to this TikTok that breaks it all down.
Oh my God, Liz Plank, Blake Lively connection that one of my followers just sent me. Liz Plank was the girl from the podcast with the Man Enough podcast with Justin Baldoni, and then she did stuff for Wrexham through Ryan Reynolds, so she has that connection. She's kind of I think she's taken Blake's side. I don't know if that's a fact, but one of my followers just sent me this, and oh my gosh, Liz Plank Productions LLC created November 22nd, 2024 in New York. Guess what the principal address for this is? Well, if you guessed 888 7th Avenue, 4th floor, New York, New York, you would be correct. And you know who else has an address there? Van Zandt. And it's got links to Blake and Ryan. The agent, also Eric Binder, who's also the agent for Van Zandt.
So this is one of those things where multiple things could be true here. On one end, yeah, it could be that Liz Plank was working at the direction of Ryan Reynolds, who was setting them all up with the same sort of companies, maybe in order to protect them, or they had the same legal team that was putting these corporations together. Or it could also just be that, a lot of people run their business out of this one location because it's just where they filed, the incorporated status. I really don't have the answer to that. But I did want to share, people posted that Liz Plank Productions, LLC, actually was filed on July 6th of 2017. So the company has been around for much longer, and it's very normal to have like these companies. I myself have a company, Dave Neal Enterprise. I mean, I pay myself a salary. I tax myself as an employee, as an employer. I got to go to HR if I'm ever mean to myself. It's a whole thing. No, but I mean, this is just what you do. This is kind of like, you have to have an LLC if you're, making money, usually as a sole contractor, S Corp, whatever. But she's a business entity based in New York, established in 2017. So does this mean that this whole theory that they're working together is not true? Not necessarily. It just, maybe she was re-registering as her business, or maybe it did move to, maybe it's now under control of the same people that do the accounting or bookkeeping for Blake's. I truthfully don't know. But it just goes to show when you're all working in entertainment, there's going to be these overlaps. I hate to say it. You know what I mean? Like, people are saying, well, Brendan Sklenar now is with WME, and that's because Ryan Reynolds was trying to silence him, so he got him a new agent. And you go, well, maybe, but also Brendan Sklenar is also a rising star. He's on the show 1923 or whatever it's called. I mean, the guy's got very good credits, so it would be no surprise that he was absorbed into a much better agency. So lots of confirmation bias that can exist when you cover these things. Now, Liz Plank, I can give you some real information that I've got, that I don't think she was bought by Ryan Reynolds from what I've heard. I think she believes some of the Blake Lively rumors and accusations against Justin Baldoni. I don't believe those, but I believe she believes them. And maybe she knows things we don't know. Again, I find that hard to believe that any new information will come out. I find that hard to believe that there's any bombshell info we haven't heard of already. Blake Lively's been fighting for her survival, so you think if she knew something, it would come out. But for Liz Plank to hitch her wagon to the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds side, maybe she thinks there's, more longevity there. I don't really know. Of course, she, made a statement and then kind of like fired herself, I guess, from her podcast with Justin Baldoni following the bombshell New York Times story. Some people think that she, was in cahoots with Ryan Reynolds. I don't know more to that other than I know multiple people that are friends with her and I've met her in the past. And my guess is the more simple thing is that she believes that she's on the right side of this, whereas most people don't. Our next story is actually an interesting one. A U.S.-born American citizen was held at the request of immigration officials in Florida. He has finally been released. This is going to be a very emotional video as he is released. And it's very fascinating because there's this idea of due process we talk about. And this is exactly why due process is needed, to prevent American citizens from being swept up by ICE officials, all because they might not have the right paperwork on them. I mean, this is the world we live in, where they're starting to tell you to go around with your passport on. It's absolutely, ridiculous. But here, listen to this.
What were the circumstances behind him being arrested and detained and being included into ICE?
Right. So he was on his way to work from Cairo, Georgia, where he lives and where he was born, into Tallahassee. So that aspect of crossing the state line came into play, and a state trooper stopped the car in which he was a passenger. He was not the driver, citing in the arrest report that the driver was going 78 miles per hour in a 65 mile per hour zone. So this eventually led to the trooper asking the passengers in the car for their identification. And the arrest report states that Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez stated that he was in the country illegally, but he showed the trooper his state ID card. And he told me after his release that he had also showed him a copy of his social security.
So he's got Social Security. He's got his state ID. His mom shows up with his birth certificate, and this guy still gets hassled. It's wild stuff. And the Supreme Court actually ruled in a bombshell ruling over the weekend. They had a late night rebuke to Trump. They're saying it's more extraordinary in more ways than one. The court didn't even wait to let Alito write his dissent. So nine Supreme Court members, the majority of them are conservative. So on standard liberal versus conservative matters, they normally side conservative, because when Trump was president last go around, there were multiple deaths that led to him appointing, right-leaning, judges. And I say all of this because, Trump's had this idea like these woke judges are out to get me. Well, these judges are far from woke. They are very conservative. Shortly before 1 a.m. on Saturday, the Supreme Court issued an emergency order halting Trump's administration's reported efforts to fly Venezuelan migrants to an El Salvador prison before they could challenge their deportation. The court's late-night intervention is an extraordinary and highly unusual rebuke to the government, one that may well mark a turning point in the majority's approach to this administration. For months, the Supreme Court of the United States has given the government every benefit of the doubt, accepting the Justice Department's dubious assertions and awarding Trump immense deference. On Saturday, however, a majority of justices signaled that they no longer trust the administration to comply with the law, including the court's own rulings. If that is indeed the case, we are likely careening towards a head-on conflict between the president and the court, with foundational principles of constitutional democracy hanging in the balance. I mean, so much so that some Republicans have called for Trump to dissolve the Supreme Court, which again would be absolutely ridiculous. He just said a week ago that he respects the Supreme Court and would do whatever they say. Well, they decided 9-0 earlier that the people that were sent to El Salvador should be sent back. But in this case, they literally had buses of these people ready to go to the airport. They were trying to rush them to get them out, out of the country so that they could say, oops, the old idea, better to apologize and ask permission. Look, that works when you're playing hooky from school, not when you're, dealing with people's lives. And again, this is all about due process, giving everybody the chance to defend themselves in court and not just sending people on planes out of here, especially after, like we just saw, you had people that are American citizens that are getting questioned and held in custody to prove that they're Americans. So Chris Van Hollen went on the news this weekend, Senator Chris Van Hollen, who of course went to El Salvador, and he's been questioned about his taxpayer money that he's used to go to El Salvador. People are saying, oh, you should be spending that money on different things. And he's saying, what are you talking about? That money is going into me fighting for my constituents that live in my state. And of course, he was called out by the mother of someone illegal murdered this lady's daughter, and she called him out saying, "Why are you defending this guy when you didn't help me over here?" And which is giant whataboutisms. But here's what he had to say in response to that.
The mother being unable to understand why you would spend so much time and energy for this person who was not in your state or in the country legally, at which time she felt like you didn't have the same concern about her daughter and her family.
I did have concern. I have concern. My heart goes out to every Maryland family that is the victim of violence, regardless of the perpetrator. And that is why I am very glad, and said so, that a court of law has convicted her killer. That is where we litigate these issues. That is where the Trump administration admitted that they had wrongfully detained and deported Abrego Garcia.
And that's what it all comes down to, right? So people online this weekend are looking at Abrego Garcia's hand tattoos to see if he's MS-13 or gang. Like, that's just not our job to do. It's not the Trump administration's job to litigate this on social media or invite someone to the White House. No, it's got to go through the court system. It's not about what we think. It's about what the court thinks. And if they didn't properly go through the court system to deport these men and send them to a prison, in some cases in a country that they don't even come from, then we need to do better than that, because due process isn't just a right that exists for citizens. It's anybody in our country. We pride ourselves as Americans on having a system that is in place to protect us from tyranny. So much so that we even have Joe Rogan now, who again endorsed Donald Trump, Joe Rogan here speaking out in defense of due process. Because look, whether it's due process or the First Amendment, the ability to have an opinion, the freedom of press, all of these things are interwoven and they all run parallel to each other, which is we need to live in a country where we have those freedoms. Here's what he had to say.
About due process. No, fuck that. But here's the problem with fuck that. The problem with things that are going in a radical direction, and then there's an overcorrection. So the overcorrection is lack of due process. The overcorrection is like round them all up, ship them to jail. Like that's like some things that you say when you're not thinking things through. Like, what do you do about all the criminals? Take them all, fucking send them to El Salvador.
Yeah.
What about due process? No, fuck that. But here's the problem with fuck that. What if you are an enemy of, let's not say any current president. Let's pretend we got a new president, totally new guy in 2028. And this is a common practice now of just rounding up gang members with no due process and shipping them to El Salvador. You're a gang member. No, I'm not. Prove it. What? I got to go to court. No, no due process.
And then it changes what is a gang member. You're defending, people in Gaza from, innocent lives. Oh, now you're supporting, terrorists. It's just like you can't make those leaps of logic. That's not what our country stands for. I sound like a crazy person when I explain this. Right? I sound crazy. I go, no. And you go, Dave, what are you talking about? You're defending a gang member? You're not listening. Everybody has the presumption of innocence because we can't take anybody's word for it when it's not put through the court system. That's how the country works. And I'm hoping more people on the right join more people on the left and come together and say, no, from now, because it's not like we don't have prisons in our country, No, we got to send them there. No, you can put someone in detention or you can, someone can be behind bars and receive a fair trial and they can appeal it if they don't like the verdict and all these things can happen. But when you send someone out of the country and you can't get them back, that's not the American way. Supreme Court knows that. I know that. And I think the rest of the country is coming around to that. All right. Well, we're going to have a lot to get into today. I'll have more content on my YouTube. Be on Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal. If you want to join me over there. We had a big boost in followers to our Instagram and TikTok page. So you can go check that out. Rush Hour with Dave Neal on Instagram or just search Dave Neal and also D Neals on TikTok. We'll see you then. I'll be back this afternoon. As always, I'm Dave. This is The Rush.